Hey, this is Ramon Ray, founder of Smart Hustle Magazine and smallbiztechnology.com, and I'm so excited today to bring to you an amazing discussion. Well, you haven't heard the discussion yet, but I think it's going to be amazing. An amazing discussion all about the aspects of communication. We'll try to touch on persuasion, communication, things that go wrong, things that go right. And again, welcome to the discussion. First of all, I know we're talking to an executive of Beautiful AI, Lou. Lou, tell us a little about yourself, your full name, and what your role is at Beautiful.
Sure. Thanks, Ramon. So I'm Lou Giacalone. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of beautiful.ai, and we are creating a new type of tool that allows you to design things even if you're not a designer and have it look fantastic and get it done quicker than ever. Our first product is a presentation tool.
Yeah, presentation tool for sure. Yep. And as one who's benefited from using the tool, I mean, please talk a little bit more. There's so many tools and things out there. It may go over people's heads. I know for me, traditionally, I think you won't mind me saying, many of us were brought up using PowerPoint. Lou may not say it, but I'm going to say it. That's the default. You got to give a presentation, your school, your college, your business meeting, use it for everything. But when I started using Beautiful, Lou, it wasn't like, I don't know, like you drink the commercials, you drink a soda or something and your eyes go ding, 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 ding. The flow, how it was created. And I think, and I want to hear more from you, but from my opinion is that the biggest thing is that you don't have to think so much. I know with other tools, you still have to think, let me lay out this to make it look half decent. With Beautiful, I find it's ingrained in there. Those are my words, but you probably could say it better.
No, I mean, I think that's a great way of thinking about it. I mean, when we talk about the AI, artificial intelligence, what it stands for, of course, the whole thing is about taking those rules of good design, the things that, you and I don't really live and breathe every day because we're not graphic designers, right? We're business people, and, we're thinking about different things. We're thinking about, persuading people to do things. We're thinking about stories we want to tell to get people excited or motivated. Right. And we're not necessarily thinking of like, oh, this is the best representation for how this should look. Mm-hmm. And benefit from having something that has that sort of opinion. You're absolutely right. I mean, everybody's been using PowerPoint for decades now. And I think that's really the challenge, right? It hasn't changed that much. It's really kept the onus on you as the individual to do it, right? It's like, here you go. You can do anything you want. Do it. And you're like, right. I'm not a designer. So it winds up looking kind of so-so.
Right.
And, our team's got a lot of experience with this, not only from, being business people and creators ourselves, but we've been building tools like this for a long time. In fact, our founder, Mitch Grasso, his last company was a company called SlideRocket and was one of the first to bring presentation technology into the cloud. And it worked great. I mean, could do all the things that PowerPoint could do. He himself is both a designer and a coder by trade. So he was able to make everything look great. But his frustration was he'd look at what other people were creating and he was like, doesn't look that great. So after selling SlideRocket, he started thinking about like, well, is there a way that we can make the technology just not let people make bad mistakes and everything would be beautiful? And kind of that's where the idea for Beautiful AI came.
And then he called Lou.
Exactly. He and I've been working together for
Lou was
decades.
driving around and Lou's like, presentations. Let me put my golf club or my pool stick down and let me chew on this a minute.
It didn't take even that long because, immediately prior to rejoining with Mitch to do Beautiful AI, I was an independent consultant. And of course, as a consultant, out there hustling, trying to get new contracts, trying to, educate people about what's going on at the client. And then of course, doing follow-up and deliverable, and it's all decks, right? You live and die by your decks as a consultant. So, I mean, it was extremely resonant with me, as it started developing. So yes, absolutely eager to jump on because again, we're decades from where we started with things like PowerPoint and, just basically giving you tools to do it all yourself. Mm-hmm. Computers are so much more capable now, and things like the AI technology allow it to do smart things, right? Not just dumb things. Like you put a box down, like why just leave it there? I mean, if it should, if it makes sense for it to be centered, just center it. Right. If there's two of them, distribute them nicely and center them both. I mean, again, this isn't rocket science. It's, quite the contrary. This is why, it's always been frustrating for people, because everybody sort of gets the innate rules about things. Keep it simple, keep it clean, don't overload people with information. But it's hard to follow these things. And again, as a non-designer, to do it yourself is just asking you to be good at something you just don't necessarily have the skills to do. And why would you want to invest so much time to learn that when you're a busy person and you got a business to run?
No, absolutely. You're so true. So let's touch on this. I mean, we talked about a few points here. I think one thing I want to touch on, and this is very broad. So let's talk to those who do presentations for a living or do all the time. And you've probably done at least one or two presentations in your life. Like, you've done hundreds and hundreds, as I've done. So presentations, Lou, again, before we get into the detail, but let's talk at a high level. You're usually trying to convince somebody of something, sell something. And that doesn't always mean sell a pen or sell a bottle of water, selling ideas.
Sell idea, exactly. You're selling a dream, you're selling the story, absolutely. It's about storytelling. And I think the other thing I'll just toss in there as a concept, the other thing about a presentation is, in its truest sense, it's you. You are the presentation, and the deck and the materials that you have supporting you are just that. They're support materials. And this is something that we see a lot of people make the mistake of, where they bring what are supposed to be supporting materials, and they bring them forward with, just tons of information that's like a data dump. And, audiences are not equipped to handle that. I mean, forget even if they were. The reality is you're asking them to look at stuff on a screen and listen to you talk at the same time. And even that simple reality, we know from, decades of research at this point, that people, if you are talking and they're trying to read, they're not going to hear you. Or if they're listening to you, they're not going to be able to do the reading. We're limited by the audience who, as far as AI comes, it's all good, but the reality is the audience is still going to be humans, and humans only do one thing at a time, and they're either going to read or they're going to listen to you, but they're not going to do both.
You're right. So let's talk about this, and this aspect of you are the presentation, and you're so true. From my experience, and I'm going to put these into these buckets. Well, let's narrow it down. Let's talk about TED Talkers, who have some of the best presentations, as it were, on the market. Can you help us understand, for the beginning presentation person, creating their slides, what do you say to people who have the cool video on it? What do you say to the professor from college that has the Encyclopedia Britannica crushed into one slide? And what do you say to the person who maybe doesn't have anything? It's all text-based, if you follow where I'm going. Can you play with me a bit here and talk to those? We want to get it right. We want to do it. The person with the movie, the person with the Encyclopedia Britannica, the person that says, you know what? I'm just going to put text. What do we do, Lou?
Well, honestly, if you want to be better, the first thing to start with, is recognizing, again, that fact your audience are humans. They're only going to be able to absorb so much stuff at a given time. Now, a lot of people, and again, this is even me back as a consultant, we're tempted to dump stuff on people because we want to show how much work we've done. I've done all this research. I've got all these ideas. I've investigated and found all this stuff out. It's all good stuff, and you don't want to lose it. So what happens with a lot of decks is they instead of becoming a presentation support, they turn into a document, effectively, a data dump. And you talk about something like a TED Talk, that I'd say probably the most interesting things about the visuals that accompany the TED Talks is how sparse they are, right? I mean, half the time you're watching the TED Talk, they don't even show the slides at all. And that's perfect, because it forces them to focus on the story. Because at the end of the day, that's all that's going to make a difference. Again, like you said, whether I'm trying to get you to buy something or invest in my company or join me as an employee or become my partner, whatever it is, I'm trying to tell you a story that's trying to inspire you to action. And that story, it has to come from me or from you, from the person doing the talking. You can't be like pointing at the slides and go like, says we're great. I guess we're great. It says you should appreciate all these things we do.
You're reading it, and you really like you're looking at reading from it.
Right, exactly. And what does that mean? It means, by definition, you're not engaged with your audience. You're not looking them in the eye. You're not talking to them and making them feel like you're talking to them, and that's the wrong direction. So TED, obviously they coach the hell out of everybody to, you know, keep it sparse, keep it minimal. What's up on the screen is, again, just enough to convey the idea that they're trying to get across, no more, no less. And again, when they have no use for it, it's off, it's over, and they move along. Now, of course, you and I aren't going to be able to, you know, do the TED Talk thing every time.
You and I could do it in a heartbeat. They just don't.
But it's again, it's about having that confidence about your story, and then bringing in visuals that reinforce that, or again, convey ideas that you just are harder to tell with words. Because of course, the good thing about decks and why they're so popular is people are visual learners. So if you stick a big statistic up there and you say that 86% of people are doing this, and you put a giant 86% up on the screen, that's going to stick.
Yeah. And it seems to me, Lou, that is the beautiful way, because as I use Beautiful, I noticed that, and again, I don't use all the template options just because of what I do. I don't need them all. Probably nobody does, but you have to put them there, of course, because you don't know who the customer is. But the point is that it tends to lean towards image in bold text, meaning if I had to, without knowing anything, without knowing, it seems to be, and I notice, and it's stylized. So that's what I got from the other world, is that image, nice, clean. Again, I'm not a font guy. You can help me talk better what I'm saying, but clean text, image, that seems to be the winning combination in somewhere form. And as you said, or just an image itself, because as a speaker, it's hard for speakers who are not used to it. People think they have to put, the boy got an apple. No, just have a boy eating an apple, which is more effective. You have to practice
Exactly. So, I mean, those are great places to start. Again, especially if you're trying to inspire and things like that. I mean, if you're in a pitch deck or something business oriented, you might need things like charts and stuff like that. And again, the key there is simplicity. So like one of the things the Beautiful AI tool does really well is allow you to take a chart and highlight it and identify the things on the chart that are important. Because again, it's your job as the speaker. The reason you're showing this to them is this chart itself is telling a story. So what am I trying to say? And how do I make that obvious? So like if you've got 3 lines and one's going up and the others aren't, I mean, you want to highlight that line. So you make that one colored and you make the others gray. Our tool will do that automatically by using what we call the emphasis feature, because we don't want you to have to think about how to represent that, but we want you to follow the best practices. You know, speaking of best practices, this is another thing you get from having an industry that's, you know, decades old. There are actually a lot of great books out there on this. Our favorites are from, a woman named Nancy Duarte, who's been, you talk about TED Talks. You know, she's been very involved with TED Talks since the beginning. She put together the presentation materials for the Al Gore movie. The
Inconvenient Truth, I think.
Inconvenient Truth, exactly. So she's really thought through a lot of these best practices and documented them, and really talks about how it connects to story and the storytelling. And this is just critical. You know, if you're not familiar with this kind of stuff, I would heartily recommend anybody go grab a couple of her books and just read it. I mean, the good news is if you don't want to do that, the ideas are baked into something like Beautiful AI. You just have to understand that as we're enforcing things like best practices, it'll tell you, you don't want to have text that's, microscopic size. You want to make sure it's readable. You don't want to have 30 bullet points on a slide, because people don't remember 30 things. They can remember 5, 6, 7 at a time. And if you can't crack down a given concept into 5, 6, or 7 sub-concepts, you probably want to rethink that and refactor it into maybe 2 things that you can structure them into 5, 6, 7 things. And again, this is just human brain power and how the brain works. And, understanding this stuff from the psychology and the lens of the viewer, and not overloading them, and giving them an easy way to understand what you're trying to tell them and the action you want to take. That's the ideal thing.
No, you're right. And I think one thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but about Beautiful, I think in a good way, it doesn't let you do, you can force it to do stupid stuff, or some way, but I think even your font structure or your sizing, the legacy tools, you can say, make it 2-point font or something like this. I think Beautiful, I think it gives you 4 options. Am I right? You may not know the details.
In fact, it just automatically does it.
Maybe
And
that's what it is, yeah.
it'll get down to a reasonable size, but after beyond that, it'll basically just say, you know, you can't type anymore.
Yeah. This is not the ANT conference, so we need to make it a little bigger.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we call it opinionated software because, and the opinions are the best practices in the industry. So, you know, we feel pretty comfortable with this. You know, it was a real risk for us going down this path because, again, like you say, everybody knows PowerPoint or Keynote, you know, because they basically come with your PC, right? Like you get a PC, you're going to get PowerPoint, you get a Mac, they give you Keynote. So you've already got these things. Nobody is out there really looking for like, oh, I got to find presentation software. No, they know all this stuff. But what they don't know is that there's a different way. Right. And that's what we're trying to get out, that like you don't, all the stuff that you've been trying to force yourself to learn and adapt to and again, overcome your own skills deficit, whether it's, you know, design or storytelling and stuff like that. We're here to make that jump a lot easier. And it's been great to see that people really embrace this because while some people still contact us and are like, I want to add that extra bullet point, or I need the text to be even tinier so I can put the stuff on there. You know, we still get that, of course, and you know, we're not trying to not serve these people, but you know, we're much more gratified by the 10 times more comments we get from people saying, you've made me look like a god of presentation, or you know, I find myself running into the constraints of your product, but I realize that this is a good thing, that this is helping me stay focused on my message and not getting wordy and saying too much. So that's when we smile, right? Because then we know that we've accomplished something, that we're giving people something that's not only making their stuff look better, but it's making them better. And to me, that's a great tool. I've been building tools my entire career. When I can make something that makes somebody else better and feel better about it, that's a win all around.
No, and you're right. And I think that if you trust the tool, as Marcus Lamona says, Lou, I'm going to come to your bagel shop. Do you trust the process though, Lou? And Lou, like Marcus Lamona says, the chicken ham, Lou has to, it's either, if you don't trust the process, well, you need to go. Lou, let's talk to the middle manager, relatively experienced professor, guy who's done a few presentations. I want to talk about themselves a bit. I know me as a speaker, a few things that I do, these may be simple, but for those who are listening, to make themselves, tool aside, simple things like smile. Simple things like, I was doing eye contact first and my brain was twisted there. Simple things like smile, simple things like eye contact, and not like you're spinning around, but just a measured looking at the room. For me, another thing I do, connecting with the audience. You know, just sometimes I'll leave the stage, or even if you're in a small classroom, you can be talking to 3 investors. One of the, with the Draper, the Mad Men video, they were doing something about the Kodak machine or something. You know, just, Lou, we like the dog food you're making. You know, you touch people. So those are 3 tips for me, just humanly. Eye contact, a smile. Be careful. I'm not saying touch in a weird way, but just that touch or a tap. 3 of many things. Lou, anything from you? Just let's put the tool aside, because I think you, as you said, the presentation is just.
You're absolutely right. These things are so important. And like we mentioned earlier, it shouldn't be about the presentation. It's not about the tool. The tool is there to help you be better, not the other way around. Right. So, you know, in addition to those things, I think some of the most common mistakes I see people make are going too fast. Right. They know their stuff. They're like experts. So they're going to, I'm going to, and everybody's like, whoa. Well, clearly you're an expert, but I just was able to absorb about 20% that you just hit the fire hose. He hit me with the fire hose and I got 20% of that, right? So slow it down. Make sure that the audience can understand. No one's going to complain and say that guy was just talking way too slow and I didn't, you know, I was bored and I walked out, right? That doesn't happen. What does happen is like, he just burned through things and I couldn't follow. Avoiding acronyms and jargon. This is, you know, again, it's very, what's the word? It's divisive language, because if you're not in the club that knows the jargon and the acronyms, then somehow you're not as good. And even if that's not true, that's how you feel. And again,
that goes back to arrogance. Sometimes
yeah, absolutely.
Off. Go ahead.
Right. I mean, it's like, but you got to make everybody feel like their message is for them. And if you're using language that they don't understand, then that's no good. And it's unclear, right? It's also a lack of clarity. Now, again, you could argue, you mentioned middle managers and stuff like that. They're probably the most guilty of this stuff because they are in environments where most of the people are familiar with the acronyms and they do know the stuff. But the reality is you've got new people on your team. You've got people coming in from other departments. So you might want to share the information. You can never go wrong being clear and using clear language that isn't jargon laden and heavy. The other thing in this same vein that I'll say is a lot of people feel that if they said it once, that they don't need to say it again. And again, this is contra to human psychology. You mentioned, Mad Men, the advertising business. The ad guys will tell you this flat out 3 times. You want to hear every message. If it's an important message, you want to be telling them at least 3 times because people don't absorb things right away. It takes a little time to sink in. And again, no one's going to be like, he gave me that brilliant idea and he told it to me 3 different ways. Like, why is this guy wasting my time? They're still absorbing. It's new to them. You're giving them new information and you're asking them to think about it in certain ways. And that takes time. So tell it to them, the old, tell them what you're going to tell them, tell it to them, tell them what you told them. I mean, it sounds so basic, but it's real. It's real because again, your audience are human beings. And this is just the psychology and the makeup of the human mind and how people process and absorb information.
You're right, Lou. And I think sometimes we forget that, in other words, how do I say this? That when we're on the recipient of good behavior like that, say repeating it 3 times, we like it. Sometimes we don't realize they repeated it 3 times. But when we're in the driver's seat, I'm talking to Lou now, and I just say 20% off, and I move on. Lou didn't probably catch 20% off the first time. So, I think to your point, we forget these common things that we receive around us when you're in the supermarket. Why do you think for 3 times in a row they said, and the turkey is free if you buy 3 bottles of Jell-O? The first time your mama didn't hear it, the second time your grandmother didn't hear it, and the third time you probably didn't hear it. So
yeah, well, I mean, and the presentation and all the stuff you're saying, it's all designed to make them think.
Yes.
So again, it's back to the doing 2 things at once thing. So if they're still thinking, and this goes to both pace and repetition.
Yes.
Still thinking about that cool thing you just told them. That pacing slow gives them a moment to work through that and clear their mind enough so that when you tell them the next thing again, they're like, right, okay. So they're like synthesizing it into a thing, but you need the pacing and repetition so that they're able to absorb it. It's the difference between, rain in a forest or rain in the desert. In the forest, it's able to absorb the water and it goes into the ground. In the desert, it can't absorb it and it turns into a flash flood and races down the canyon and can cause damage. But it's the same amount of water. It's just whether it's being absorbed or not.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Lou, I want to get to one thing I want to talk about is blending using a PowerPoint with people. So I'll get to that in a minute. But I think another tip I just wanted to give and talk about is the aspect of practice. For those who are new to it, I want to get to those who are a little more seasoned like me and Lou. We can all learn. But to those who are new, I say practice, practice, practice. One solo, just reading, or you should never read, but using your paper if you want. Then practice with the Beautiful, with your presentation software. And I would say videotape yourself or at least record. Lou, I know I speak fast. Man,
I agree.
The first time I heard just an audio of me, hello, Lou, how are you today? My name is Ramon Technology.com. I was like, and it's helped me a little bit slow down. So that's for newbies, practice, all variations of practice, is what I say.
Yeah, no, I mean, and there's groups that can actually help you do this too. I mean, I know when I was first started doing public speaking and stuff like this, I decided to do Toastmasters. And
perfect organization.
It was fantastic. I mean, again, you don't think about all these things, but the non-words, the ums and the ahs, and like you say, you videotape yourself and you see, how you're standing and stuff like that, and confidence postures and stuff like that. I mean, it all makes sense. And these groups are really supportive and they're really nurturing, and again, lots of best practices. And it's even if you're just going to run into somebody on the street and you're going to talk to them. I mean, that's a presentation, right? You're making your pitch. So you want to have that confidence and you want to have those speaking skills. I'm totally with you. It's a worthy investment to know yourself, know your habits, crack them down. Videoing is great. Listening to your recordings is great. I mean, that's how you learn, and it just takes a little effort.
And you may cringe a bit, but it's good for you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Any tips, Lou, for those who are a bit more seasoned? I mean, it may be difficult. There may be not specific tips, but I know some things. So I'd be curious who you watch. For me, Steve Harvey. I don't know if he's a professional presenter, as it were, but he's making gazillions, so he's professional, whatever you want to call it. He's a comedian, so he's seasoned. Steve Harvey. For me, Seth Godin. I just like the way those two happen to be gentlemen. That's my favorite, and I think what I've learned from them, for those maybe who are a bit more seasoned as we practice our craft, and noting, I think you'll agree, Lou, you may not, but that everything is not fun and games and ha-ha. You may be talking about a serious topic. You may be talking about abuse or a serious sickness. So we're not saying you have to be entertaining. That happens in my style, and Lou has his own. But some tips I would say is that I think the pauses you make, that's a big thing. I've seen Steve Harvey do that incredibly well. I'm not going to do it here because I can't think of it, but pausing. Practicing with the presentation tool and how you're speaking. Do you show the little boy who dropped the ice cream first, pause, and then talk about it or not? There's not a right way, but learning the cadence of your, so those are two for me, Lou. Pauses and practicing how you use your presentation tool, the ebb and flow. Anything from you can think of for those a bit more seasoned?
Yeah, well, to me, some of the things that I appreciate about presenters that have a lot more experience is they're really good about reading the audience and adapting, right? It's because it's so easy to just say, I'm doing my thing and it doesn't matter what else is happening. But again, that's the wrong way to think about it, because the only reason you're there doing that is because of that audience sitting out there, and you want to make the impact on them. So you'll find, techniques like going and learning a little bit more about the audience, or if it's a bigger crowd, again, what their group and what their values are and their missions are, and certainly tuning small wording choices and stuff like that to, again, inure yourself to that audience, because it's no matter who you're presenting to, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, the one thing that is not the same every time is the audience. So you're going to want to be different for every audience.
Wow.
You mentioned the pausing again. That goes right back with my thing about pacing, right? Couldn't agree more, right? And you bring it back where you're taking them on a journey and you understand story. The biggest thing that the advanced technique would be, to me, is really knowing how to tell a good story, because it's like the movies, right? You go to the movie and you crack it down, and they all kind of wind up the same. Like, you find this person and they're in this situation and they're struggling and they work very hard and they come to a positive conclusion, and then things kind of wrap up after that. Well, that's the hero's journey, right? I mean, this is classic storytelling. So all of your things that you're trying to get across, they are stories, and you're asking the audience to come on a journey with you. So the better the storyteller you are, the better you're going to engage the audience. And this is where, again, reading, or like you say, following some excellent speakers, note how they're telling the stories. And I mentioned Nancy Duarte. She has a whole book specifically just about the story aspect. Doesn't even have anything to do with the deck or the presentation. It's just about the sort of the patterns of storytelling. And this is something that we're interested on the presentation side too, because what if the template wasn't just like, well, here's a chart template. What if it's like, I need to show that revenues are growing. So what is the sequence of things that I should tell the story about the revenue? What do I want to be telling about it? It's that they're growing and I want them to grow higher. They're growing and we're concerned because the competition's growing more, right? There's various stories, and like, you can take these stories and you want to create that emotional journey in your human audience to take the action you want. So if you're trying to convince them that things are going very well, but there's a looming threat on the horizon from competition or from technology change or whatever, you need to bring that fear to them, so they internalize that and want to create the change that you're looking to create with them as a leader, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, there's everything is a story, and because if it's not a story,
Yes.
it's going to be boring, and they're going to be a and that's why
you're right.
there's a time and a place for data dumps, but really it's at the end of the presentation where somebody says, can I get a copy of all that data that you used to build this? And you're like, absolutely. Send them the data dump. But you just don't put your data dumps on the screen, because what's on the screen is reinforcing your story. So it's you and your story, some visuals to pull it together, and then a nice clean delivery that people can understand and follow and absorb.
For sure. And Lou, I was looking on Barnes & Nobles, on Amazon, all over. I didn't see Lou's guide to presentation. Did I miss it, Lou? Did I miss it?
There's so many.
That's a compliment. I encourage you, Lou. Really, you and the team.
Well, I appreciate the honor. I'm one of those guys like yourself, just working it too hard, too busy with the day gig to spend the time to write the book, right?
Maybe we'll do it together one day, seriously. But I was Jay Baer recently was at a conference, and it was a big hall, round tables. I don't remember, cavernous. And to your point about reading the audience, he's such a master at his craft. Jay Baer, for those who don't know, B-A-E-R, and he was just talking about how he did an Instagram video where he talked about how he had to read the room. I don't recall the points, but he just had to adapt. He said, I realized it was a big hall. I had to be careful the jokes I told, the echo. It was just interesting how he very aware of where he was at, just even the technicality of the room. So I feel that was pretty cool.
I mean, I think that's a great word, aware, right? This because it's really easy. You're up front, you got a light on you. If it's not literal, it's virtual, right? And it's easy to think like I'm just completely in my head. But to everything that you can do, you need to connect with the audience. Yeah. To your point about looking them in the eye and talking to individuals, you don't want to just be doing this scan thing, because that's, again, people think you're just talking, right? And you're not talking to somebody. You pick somebody and you talk to them for 5, 6, 10 seconds, and then you move to somebody else. Right. And people think you're engaged, and it's again, these are best practices, and they're worth learning.
Absolutely. Let's end, Lou, on going back to beautiful AI. Sure. A few things. Let's dive into some of the features which do translate to benefits, I think, and a few things at the top of my head that I think I just love. And you can slow me down or recap however you want to do it, but I'm just going to data dump some things that I like, and then we can recap as you want. But I just love the fact that the images, it has very nice images there. You don't have to go, search.google and then get or image.google and get arrested and all that. So great images. I love the aspect of it's already in the cloud. So I think that's a plus. You don't have to worry about saving it. You can share with others. Convert to PDF, or if you want to convert to legacy to PowerPoint, it can. So those are just 3 things. We talked about the AI part of it, but just 3 simple things, and the templates. Anything else, or if you want to recap those that I just personally like about beautiful AI?
Sure. Well, I think you touched on a couple of things that I'll reinforce. We're surprised how many people still aren't really 100% familiar with the benefits of the cloud, which is, again, as a techie guy, that's like, really? It's 2019. Okay, but sure. And it kind of dawned on us that, again, because people are using PowerPoint on their desktop or laptop, or Keynote on your desktop or laptop, these aren't cloud applications. So presentations in the cloud isn't like the norm. People are a little surprised when they realize that they can send a link and they don't have to worry. Like, I don't know how many times in my career I've been like, oh, my PowerPoint file is too big, I can't email it to you. What service do you use? Do you have Dropbox? Oh, can I send it? Like whatever. And it's just like, oh, you're right. That's just gone with cloud-based applications. The ability, something that's not yet shipping in the product, but is coming this year. The other great thing is like when you send a link, similar to the way that marketers know that you looked at their ads, you'd be able to know that somebody looked at your presentation. And as a business person, that's tremendously valuable. It's like, oh, that proposal I sent Ramon, well, he opened it up and he actually went through the whole thing, and he spent 6 minutes on the slide with the value proposition and 7 minutes on the pricing page. So I think he looked at it, right? I think he got it. And that's, again, something the cloud can do that you can't do mailing files around. Same thing, since we're using web technologies, this isn't like stuck on your computer. This is content for the web. And people can take their presentations and embed them right on their blog or on their website, just like they do a YouTube video. So now they can create content using presentation technology, something they're familiar with and is super easy, that they can bang out like that. And it can even kind of look like a video and be made to autoplay. So there's a lot of cool things that you get from the cloud alone that I think people, again, people who have been on PowerPoint and Keynote forever and not used things like Google Slides and familiar with that, it's certainly worth, just for the cloud aspect alone, of digging into that and understanding it and seeing if it's going to benefit your business, because I suspect it will. There's really just a lot of things to do with it. In terms of, sort of my favorite things, about Beautiful AI, the templates, the layout. Again, I'm not a designer. Like yourself, our brains are running a million miles a minute. So for me, it's like, how do I get my story onto the slides quickly?
In the shortest amount of time, it's like, let's go.
Right, exactly. And then you're just like, the wheels are turning, and so the fact that I can just keep entering stuff, I was like, right, I'll make this point, enter it at this point, and then instead of me having to like look up and see like, oh, this is all cluttered, or this list went off the screen and now I gotta like figure out how to get it on. No, it's all just as I'm doing it. It just keeps it looking good. It's like, oh, he typed two things, so now here they are. Oh, he typed a third, so I'm gonna shift that over here, put that down here. And the same thing, like if I'm making a team slide or whatever else, it's like 1, 2, 3. Oh no, now there's 4. It's like, oh, let's shift to 2 and 2. It just does that, and it looks great. And for me, that's just like to not have to think about that, because that stuff would always just be like, okay, I'm going to do this idea, and oh wait, how am I doing this? And then all of a sudden I lost my train of thought, and then I'm trying to make something attractive and not doing a great job of it, and it's just like, right. So the fact that you can just power through and tell a whole story, it's a great advantage. And in fact, we had one of our team members participate at a conference recently, and they were able to effectively almost live blog the conference with presentations and provide them to the conference host to share out as content, because it was so easy. Just as they're talking, just enter the stuff and grab a picture with the camera, with the cell phone camera, and just put that in the presentation.
That is nice.
So it's this. Again, when you start to think a little bit different about what possibilities are and what this can enable you to do, to me, that's the most exciting part of it, is not what you could already do. Because again,
right.
We all knew PowerPoint and Keynote anyway. We know we could get there, whether or not we like the way it looks. But this is about, lightning fast and looks great, and in most cases is better than what I would have done myself, because it obeys the laws of good design and the rules of the best practices for presentation. So some things that, again, I'm always way too tempted to bend those rules with other software.
And I will say one tip for those who are listening and thinking, wow, how, I know I had some legacy presentations that I wanted to make Beautiful AI-able or eyes. I don't know how to do the verb there. But what I did was, the simple thing I did was I had my admin. She has an access now to Beautiful AI, and we just started from scratch. Yeah, if you have thousands and thousands, it may sound a bit onerous, and that you can do that later. But for those of us who may have 5, 10, or 20, I didn't want to have them exactly the same. I wanted Beautiful AI's intelligence. She loves it. So she already had the data is there, the information, the words. I said, just let Beautiful do it for you. So real quickly, so I just want to add that I just had her. She already knows how I talk. She has my presentations. And just one by one, if I say, hey, I'm flying tomorrow or next week, we just will one by one. Now I have a library of Beautiful AI presentations. So
that's great. Yeah, no, I mean, that's what we love to hear that. I mean, because we do tell folks, because we can't really import stuff from PowerPoint, because
where do you want to?
Yeah, right. Why do you want to import the ugliness? But some people do have nice PowerPoints and want to, but they want to also get the benefit of Beautiful. And it is easy to recreate the stuff from scratch, because it's kind of like what I was saying. Once you know what you want to say, finding representations for it that are well designed for you is very straightforward.
And it gives you the reason, Lou, to get freshness in it. I mean, as I was redoing it and looking at it, I was able, come on, let's be, I'll tell you all the secret. Sometimes we don't change the presentations. We use the same one. Lou won't tell you, but we do.
Never.
My point, though, being it gives you a chance to say, hey, it's not 2004 anymore. Let me update this.
Yes.
But Lou, why don't you leave us with any 1 or 2 last words before we end this great interview? I think we talked about a lot, and I'm excited to share with our team. But anything else you want to add or say, anything I didn't ask, anything you wanted to close on, Lou?
Well, I'll just, again, thank you for talking with me today about this stuff. It's great stuff in that, we live in a great time where, again, the ability to tell great stories with more efficiency and effectiveness than ever before. It's a great time to be in business and to get to share your stories and to get to inspire people and get them to do stuff. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think I think anybody who's a fan of yours and doing their own hustle and out there, I think they're going to love this because it's made for hustlers.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ramon Ray, founder of smallbiztechnology.com and smarthustle.com. So Lou, thanks so much. And you can check out Beautiful at beautiful.ai, and we'll have the URL and other things here.